What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports QuaranTV. Chris Dobson, Gerry Green coming at you Thursday. Hope you guys have had a great week. We've got a great show coming at you. We're going to start with the QMJHL because the Gilles Courteau Cup is underway. We are halfway through this best-of-7 series at this point. The Halifax Mooseheads and the Quebec Ramparts. As we record this, Quebec holds a 2-1 series lead. Gerry, I want to get your thoughts and impressions so far because it hasn't been as lopsided as people seem to have thought it was going to be. The Mooseheads did come away with one in Quebec. They split that series up there. Could have won game 3 at home on the road, but blew a lead late. Lost that game in overtime. Overall, are you shocked by what you're seeing? Are you shocked by the pushback the Mooseheads have had? I mean, the goaltending's kind of been rocky. I could say that. I was expecting a big goaltending shootout matchup. But
there's my segue. There's my perfect segue, Chris. Of course, after game 1 and Quebec wins 5-1, you say, okay, well, Halifax has done this before. They've lost the first game before. They lost it to Moncton, in that series of a game 1 they shouldn't have lost. And so they bounced back in game 2. But here's the stat, Chris. As I went into this series, I called it the Rousseau series. Which Rousseau is going to be the better of the two? Is it William Rousseau for Quebec? Is it Mathis Rousseau for Halifax? Well, let me tell you this. Neither one of them has got the numbers to be proud of in the first 3 games of this series. They're playing game 4 as we record this, so it'll be interesting to see what the score is. But the score overall, Chris, have been high. Think about it now. William Rousseau's allowed 11 goals in 3 games. That's 3.66 goals against, and his save percentage is .878. That's not good. And then Mathis Rousseau isn't much better. Halifax has allowed 13 goals, of which Mathis is 4.33 goals against and a save percentage of .861. Going into this series, both of them were under 2 in goals against and at around .930 as a save percentage. So you see this series, there hasn't been 40 some odd shots every night. They're talking about 30 and 25 to 35 shots. And these goaltenders aren't performing like they did in the first few rounds, which astonishes me. And watching game 3 the other night, the overtime goal came on a shot from about 50 feet that Mathis Rousseau doesn't handle very well, and Quebec punches it in to take a series lead. So that's the most shocking thing to me, is the goaltending and how it all of a sudden has looked very normal. Watching the highlights from Quebec, it looked very normal. Wrist shots, making it through the body, which goaltenders, when it starts going through your body, you've got something going on in your head, because if you beat me high or beat me low, a little bit different than going through my body. So overall, it's still exciting. I like that type of hockey. I don't like 2-1. Well, I do like 2-1, but I like back and forth and to and fro in a game. But I don't think either coach likes it. That's for sure.
No, I have to agree with you. And I mean, to me, that was the stunning point for me. Now, I know that as we record this, this episode, it was interesting to see, and I don't quite know what the injury was, but the Mooseheads look like they're going to be down a man going into game 3. Zach Leroux's not in the lineup, and that's a big loss for Halifax. Now, how can they rally around them to see if they can even up this series? It'll be really interesting. But at the same time, it's, what I found has been extremely exciting has been the attendance in both of these buildings. We talked about that last week.
Sure.
17, 18,000 plus in Quebec, 10,000 plus in Halifax. They're selling out both of these barns every night they're there. They're giving the fans something to shoot for, but they just look, whoever's the better goaltender, whoever steps up, I do think can steal this series. I mean, again, a 2-1 series lead is not the end of the series. You don't want to go down 3-1 if you're Halifax.
Oh, that's for sure. From the other series, Chris, the OHL has London and Peterborough playing it, and I watched it the other night, and these two teams don't like each other. And I don't think most of the OHL teams like London. I think London is hated in a lot of locales. And anyways, Peterborough was up in the series 2-1. They were playing game 4 last night. And don't know the results at this time, but that looks like a lot of fun. And then out west, Seattle's taken the lead on Winnipeg in the WHL final 2-1. So that's what you have going on in all series. And plus, we do know the Memorial Cup's going to be out west in Kamloops. We just haven't decided who the 3 teams are going to go to take on the Kamloops Blazers, who won't be an easy host, just like St. John wasn't an easy host. St. John ends up winning as the host last year. Don't be surprised if Kamloops does it again this year, too.
Yeah, it's not as unorthodox as it had been the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen teams, eliminated early, come on in, and then maybe not even necessarily eliminated early, but come on in with a little bit of fresh legs, do what you have to do. But overall, with that being out in Kamloops, one interesting thing I noticed before we move on, and just as kind of a fun fact of the day, is if you looked at, before going into the Memorial Cup, the OHL, they're donning their Mem Cup jerseys on their jerseys as we speak, but the WHL and the QMJHL haven't put them on there yet. So looks like they're waiting to crown a champion before they move them on out. They're not putting Mem Cup logos on the jerseys. All right, let's move on from the Gilles Courteau Cup to the Stanley Cup playoffs, because as a Canadian, this is got to be exactly what Gary Bettman and the National Hockey League wanted. We've got all U.S. teams, although there's a bit of some stories here. I honestly think that Eastern Conference matchup between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes is going to be a dandy of a series. I know a lot of people, you look at the Cinderella story that is the Florida Panthers and Matthew Tkachuk and the second half of the season they had and how they came on beating the Bruins, then the Leafs that come on into Carolina. But Carolina looks real good right now. And I don't know how that's going to play out. But, have you been excited with the Stanley Cup playoffs so far? Or are you kind of bored about it now that Edmonton's out and the Leafs are out?
No. Well, Toronto's out, which is a bummer. But in regards to having some sort of emotion towards some of the games, but I really jumped on the Florida bandwagon. I love the way they played, not only with coming back against Boston, which I didn't like, but I respected the way they played and the way that they dominated Toronto somewhat. And, going into the series, Hurricanes are 8-3 in the playoffs. Guess what? The Panthers are 8-4. They again beating Toronto in 5 games after going 7 with Boston. And you got the Knights are 8-3, and you got the Stars that are 8-6 who went into 2 game 7. So you don't know how that's going to wear on them. I had my crack research staff on this today, Chris. I was looking at geography, and you could call it the Southern Stanley Cup Final Four, because the most northern team of the Final Four, the Vegas Golden Knights, just barely further north than Raleigh, North Carolina, where the Hurricanes play. And of course, we know Florida and Dallas are a lot further south. It is amazing to think of how many hockey fans are that further south, besides, let's say, the cities that they play in. Who else cares down there? And really, Chris, is that a problem for the NHL? I mean, they wanted to penetrate southern states. They want the Americans to like hockey, but is this too far south?
I don't think so. I think it's good for what Bettman's trying to do. I think he's trying to grow the game in states, where necessarily hockey was never a big thing. And look, it's doing just that. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning have done it year after year after year after year. I mean, they're bringing Florida fans into the building. But overall, I think it's great. California, Florida, Texas, depending on what happens with the Arizona Coyotes, could we see Houston get in that market as well? It wouldn't shock me. But overall, I think them putting these teams in these southern states, I think is beautiful. I know you're going to hate me saying this because you're going to be like, oh, he found a way to tie the Montreal Canadiens into a conversation here. But if you look at this Florida Panthers team, they came back and beat the Bruins in 7. They beat the Leafs in 5. Let's go back a couple years when the Montreal Canadiens on that Cinderella story came back to beat the Leafs in 7. Then beat your Jets in 5, then went on to beat Vegas. All 3 of those were potential cup contenders. And if you look at what Florida's doing right now, this Cinderella story is remarkable. They're getting great goaltending from Bobrovsky. Matthew Tkachuk's playing well. Barkov's playing great.
That's the Final Four, Panthers, Chris. Man. You could certainly jump on the back of Bobrovsky. And if you remember, Chris, in game 1 versus Toronto, Bobrovsky did not start. They had the rookie Lions start because he had a great regular season finish, and then Bobrovsky came in. So it's amazing how he's recovered. He's looked impressive against Toronto. He looks like he sees everything coming at him. I wouldn't put it past the Panthers to make it by the Hurricanes. But, let's get back to talking about the Leafs, Chris, a little bit. I saw a most interesting quote was this about the Leafs. They don't hate to lose. That's what it was put to that core 4. If you hate to lose so much, you go out and make sure people know that when you're on the ice, and you fight for every puck, you fight for every inch, you fight for everything. But if you don't hate to lose, it's just moving on to something else. So be it. It's time to break that bunch up. And I think Matthews is the leader of that.
So I'm really glad you brought that quote out. And, because I'm not going to sit here and say, because I know there's a lot of questions that are trying to put the Oilers in the same category, and you can't. To me, the Oilers, I don't even think you let the Oilers run it back. I'm fine with that. But going back to the Leafs, and this is what the focus needs to be. The quote was, they don't hate to lose. And that came from the beautiful show that is Shoresy. That came through, and that's when he came on and he said that. He said,
Right.
look, it's not that they hate losing and hate winning. It's that they don't hate to lose. And that's the problem. You're absolutely right. This nonchalant, and I know this irritates you here too, coming to the rink in a hoodie and a pair of sweatpants, coming to, because they're not professionals anymore. And I will not, although I'm one of the rare few people are calling for Kyle Dubas's head. Sheldon Keefe should go. He got out coached back-to-back years. I think he peace out. See you later. Kyle Dubas has done everything in his power to give this team a chance to win. You can't blame the GM here. He's done a hell of a job. In fact, it hurts me to say this as a Montreal Canadiens fan. Look, I love our GM, but Kyle Dubas is an absolute rock star. I know there was rumors about a quick extension. Now there's rumored to be, who knows? But overall, you can't blame him. But you're right. I think Tavares, to me, would be the guy who's got to go, but no one's taken the contract. Period. End of story. Not happening.
Right.
Nylander's got like a $6.5 million cap hit. Probably the best cap hit. To me, Mitch Marner's your guy. He's your scapegoat. I love Mitch, but he's probably the most tradable asset you have, because if you're going to trade Austin Matthews, you're getting a superstar in return. That's it. That's all. Say what you will about him. He's still Austin Matthews. But Mitch Marner, to me, is the guy. If you can break out Mitch, I know they're best friends with Austin, but look what happened with the Raptors, Jerry. Nobody wanted to see DeRozan leave. They made that trade.
Yep.
They won a title. Same thing's going to happen with the Leafs. It has to happen.
Yeah, but they got to get some value back. They talk about, and I don't know if it's about draft picks, because then you're not assured of getting a good player even with a first round draft pick, because you got to have a good scouting staff. I mean, how many times you look through a draft listings and see guys that never ever made it to the NHL and they were taken in the first 15 players? You got to have a good draft system as well, and so I'm not one to say that you got to trade Austin Matthews for draft picks. You got to trade him somewhere where it's beneficial. It's very similar, as Jason said, it's very similar to trading like Tkachuk for Huberdeau. They needed new scenery, and both of them were stars, and how the scenery has changed for both of them, that's something that needs to happen here. And you can smell it. Matthews wants to go to the States, and
certainly can't go to Arizona anymore.
I don't know if it'll happen, but I think the Leafs are going to make an offer. It's up to him to make the decision.
I fully agree. And, I'm glad you brought up that Huberdeau piece, because Huberdeau came off a career season. That wasn't an easy trade for the Florida Panthers to make, but they knew they had to make it to bring in grit and star power like Matthew Tkachuk. And look what happened. Look where they are today. Either way, you're going to see something change in Leafland real soon, but it shouldn't start with the GM, but you are going to have to break up this core four. Okay, let's move on to the NBA, because this has been exciting. You look at the Lakers Nuggets series. I mean, the Lakers have I'm not going to say been pooled or counted out in every series they've had, because they have come back. They had a great second half of the season after the trade deadline. They're going to have their hands full with this Nuggets squad. But even the game one loss that the Lakers had,
yes,
Anthony Davis put up 40 plus points. LeBron had 30 points. Austin Reeves had 20 plus points. This Lakers team is good. Just the Nuggets couldn't miss. They couldn't miss.
And it is, again, as I said, you got to make your shots. My goodness. And just going back to the fact that the Celtics beat the 76ers in the last week in game number 7, and how their stars weren't taking shots, let alone making shots, and Embiid and Harden. And so that was pretty satisfying for me, because I love seeing the Celtics come back. I love watching Jason Tatum going from being ice cold to being red hot. But this is what I'd be looking forward to, Chris. Wouldn't it be something if we go back to the 80s and have the Celtics play the Lakers in the final? It would be a lot of fun. And if you're too young to remember, but the Bird Magic basketball era was something to behold. How young do you think I am? It was great. It was great basketball. And so to flash that back again, so the Boston fans can say, beat LA, beat LA. That would be good. I don't know if LA can get by the Nuggets. The Nuggets are certainly dynamite, and you can't underrate the Miami Heat, who they've knocked off on the way, including the number 1 seed, which was Milwaukee. So it's been fun. I've been watching the basketball, Chris, because it's been very dramatic. There's been a
Absolutely.
lot of storylines, which makes it more fun. When you have an attachment to a storyline, or if you have a passion of somebody you want to win or somebody you hate, then it's more fun.
And don't forget too, the Nuggets have the real MVP on that team. Jokic has been
Yes.
unbelievable. He's
Yes.
playing like a man on a mission right now. I am hoping to see. I'm sure the NBA is also hoping to see the Lakers play the Celtics in the final for ratings. That's your moneymaker right there. I will say if the Lakers do get through the Nuggets, I don't think they're being stopped. I don't care who they're playing. I think that they're just, Anthony Davis, if he gets up 25 shots a game, there's no stopping them. Last night was just look, keep them in check. They're going to keep Jokic. Jokic was hitting like fadeaway one-handed three-pointers. Murray was playing unbelievable. They're not going to keep that up the entire series. I'm still taking the Lakers in 6, and then I'm going to take the Lakers over the Celtics in the final. Look, I'm going all the way. I'm going all the way here. That's how I.
Where's your Laker jersey? I'm waiting to see that in the background here.
Oh,
what about the draft, Chris? The draft is coming up. They have their lottery, eh?
Yeah, the Spurs hit the lottery jackpot, landing the number 1 pick and the right to draft 7'3" French phenom Victor Wembanyama. They say he is the hottest prospect to come into the NBA draft since LeBron James, Jerry. Now, there are some concerns. Really? Yeah, this kid is the real deal. And it helps, too, if you go back to the Spurs and the relationship with Tony Parker and how that all played out. I mean, look, the Spurs have absolutely nothing but love for the basketball players out of France, and Victor is no slouch. He is going to absolutely change the mold of this franchise. There are some concerns here.
Have you seen the footage, though, Chris, of him handling the ball? And he seems very nimble. He seems very quick. He's super tall. He's got an 8-foot span on him, and he can handle the ball. It's something I've never seen in a fellow that's that tall. And of course, San Antonio has had some great history with tall guys, including David Robinson and Tim Duncan, who they took first overall in drafts through the years, and how successful they were with those players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought that up. Because like I said, this is the 3rd time the Spurs have won the draft lottery to pick first overall. They took Robinson in 87. They took Duncan in 97. And, those are Hall of Fame big men. Like that's how they do it. Although I had to laugh. I saw a picture of Popovich, and he was standing there and he was just looking with his scowl on his face. And they're like, hey, look at Pop. He's super excited. They won the draft lottery. So overall, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Look, the Spurs have won 5 titles under Greg Popovich. I think this is just going to be another feather in their cap. I'm happy for Spurs fans. They deserve this. Although at the same time, you still feel for the teams that didn't make the draft lottery, but this is the best place I wanted him to go. We got to talk quickly about the Jays Yankees. There was some drama this week. Aaron Judge cocking the eye, looking over, and then you had Herman suspended 10 games for the sticky substance. I mean, this is some interesting stuff happening right now between the Jays and Yankees.
Well, Chris, I was watching the game the other night, and at my age, I tend to maybe have a little nap during the game, and I woke up, and it was 10:30, and they were only in the 7th inning. I said, what is going on here? And missed the whole bit about the changing. So see, because that's what happens when you took Jermaine out, you allowed them to bring a pitcher in and get a full warm-up. And so that had to be time consuming, and I think they used 2 or 3 pitchers in that particular inning. I don't recall, but I couldn't believe how long the game had run when I'm so used to seeing them, bang themselves off in 2.5 hours. Chris, there's no way Judge is looking over as he's in the box to his bench and getting any sort of signals. Come on. He's looking over there for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't believe his excuse on why he did, but he's not picking up some sort of tip on the pitch, is he?
And who cares if he is? It's baseball. It's been going on forever. The one thing I didn't love about it is I didn't love, I understand that it's media's job to create some drama, but I didn't think, they didn't need to start calling this out during the broadcast, talking about it, making a bigger deal about it than it was. I agree with you. And if it was, find a way to stop it. I don't know. That's my suggestion, but it'll be interesting to see how this thing heats up because the Yankees are starting to play good baseball right now. And I don't know how this whole thing is going to play out.
And that's the thing, Chris. Here, the Jays were coming off a 3-game sweep of Atlanta, which was very impressive. And they do it with Bassett and Kikuchi. How's she going? And then they come up against the Yankees. They're going to try to get a split of the 4-game set. And then they've got Baltimore coming in, and then they got to go to Tampa next week, Chris. It's a good test.
I fully agree. And quickly, 20 seconds or less, PGA Championships coming up. I want your winner. Scheffler and Rahm are the favorites. Who do you think is pulling this thing away?
I'm going to say Xander Schauffele.
Okay. I like that pick. I'm going with Rory McIlroy. At some point, I'm going to hit. I'm sure of it. We haven't been very good in our predictions, but we'll see how it all plays out. Well, Jerry, all good things must come to an end. Let's close this show off. It's time for the wrap. And where we're going to start today is the Centennial Cup. Do you have an update for us?
Yes, I do, Chris. It's taking place in Portage La Prairie, Manitoba, and the Maritime Hockey League, the MHL champs, the Yarmouth Mariners are there. The Mariners went through the playoffs, if you remember, Chris, 12-0 to advance at the Centennial Cup. Well, they've had a few bumps in the road since they got there. And on Wednesday, they had to come up with a victory to get to the quarterfinals. They finished the round robin at 1-2-1, will make the quarterfinals, but it's been a bumpy road out there in Manitoba for the Yarmouth Mariners. Bumpy road. Well, how about the bumpy road of the ECBL, Chris? Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, it's not great news, but hopefully it's going to turn it into great news. The ECBL ends its 1 year early per release. You know, its first year inaugural coming on through the Eastern Canadian Basketball League in an effort to restructure and return stronger in 2024. They announced they're going to end regular season play on May 21st. You know, it was the inaugural season, but the inaugural ECBL Championship Shootout Tournament is going to be held on May 26th to 28th. The details will be announced on that. Hopefully this is something that's just, trying to work out some of the hiccups, because again, if you look at what this team has done and you look at what the league has done, it's really interesting to see, because as you know, when the NBL was in town and they were doing other sports, this one here is the teams are owned by the league. So they really want to try to make sure that this thing takes off. Either way, I hope they're taking this time to look back at what happened, what's worked, what didn't. They restructure and come back strong in 2024. But either way, it's sad to see. I went to one game here in Moncton. I actually had a great time. I love live basketball, but overall, I hope they get it right. We're rooting for them. We'll see how it all plays out, but they will be ending on May 21st. Some familiar faces from the QMJHL are squaring off in the AHL playoffs, Jerry.
Yeah, some faces that might be familiar. I like to keep track of what's going on in the other leagues, and the AHL has a Pacific Division final. They have 4 divisions, I believe. And the Pacific Division final has the Calgary Wranglers, who is the farm team for the Calgary Flames, taking on the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who are the property of the Seattle Kraken. Well, they're in a series. They're playing game 4 tonight with Coachella leading the series 2-1. They're playing it, Chris. If you didn't know where Coachella's arena was, it's in Palm Desert, California. It's called the Acrisure Arena, seats about 10,000 for hockey. But the names that are familiar, Jeremy McKenna plays for the Firebirds, along with Luke Henman. You might remember Luke Henman was the first overall draft pick made by the Kraken, and he's a Nova Scotia boy. He played with Blainville for all his career in the Q. Meanwhile, the Calgary Wranglers, of course, have Jacob Pelche, and Pelche in 7 games has 4 goals and 2 assists. Yank Kuznetsov, familiar to St. John Sea Dog fans, and of course, Jeremy Poirier is playing in Calgary as well. And I failed to mention that Jeremy McKenna, in 11 games now in the playoffs, has 4 goals and 5 assists to lead his team in scoring. So it's pretty exciting. The AHL has some wrinkles to it that have some maritime flavor. Chris, John Morant is a moron. What is going on?
That was probably the greatest segue I could have ever heard you use, but no, you're bang on. John Morant, of course, caught on film on social media live again, looked to be holding a gun. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said last night that he was shocked when he first saw the latest John Morant video. Morant, star of the Memphis Grizzlies, appearing to be flashing a gun. Silver said the league's investigating the situation, but he is, quote, assuming the worst. Last night, Ja did issue a statement that said, and I quote, "I know I've disappointed a lot of people who've supported me. This is a journey, and I recognize there is more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability in my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself." You know what I hear when I hear that? As far as I'm concerned, I'm done. John Morant, they're going to throw the book at him. I'm going to suggest he's probably going to see a 41-game suspension. He's going to miss half the year. This is the second time in like a month and a half this guy's done something foolish like this. Either way, John Morant, I am done with you. I salute you. Gerry, let's move on. Do we have an update on the World Hockey Championships?
Yeah, we tend to forget that when the NHL playoffs are going on, the World Hockey Championships are going on, and most of the teams are fed by the teams that didn't make or didn't go very far in the NHL playoffs. And it's located in two spots this year, Chris. It's happening over in Europe. They have Pool A is in Finland. Pool B is in Latvia. That's where Canada is, and they're trailing the Swiss. The Swiss are undefeated so far at 4-0, and Canada's at 3-1. Some familiar faces on Canada's team that would be familiar to maritime hockey fans. P.O. Joseph is playing. Of course, he plays for Pittsburgh. He's playing for Canada. Justin Barron is there. Mackenzie Weegar, who spent his career in Halifax with the Mooseheads. And Joe Veleno, who spent his career, of course, a lot of his career in St. John with the Sea Dogs. They're in action. Nikolai Ehlers is leading the Denmark team, another fellow that's familiar to maritime hockey fans. And that's continuing for a while yet. Canada and Swiss don't meet till Saturday. That'll be an interesting game coming up in the World Hockey Championships. Toronto Maple Leafs are in the news big time, Chris, but it's for a former employee. Explain.
Wow, you're absolutely right. Didn't think I'd ever have to say these words in a sentence, and it may not come to, but former Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Mike Babcock is among those the Columbus Blue Jackets have interviewed for their vacancy. According to The Athletic, also note other candidates: former Washington Capitals head coach Peter Laviolette, internal candidate Pascal Vincent. They've also had interviews with the team. He notes that the team's expected to name a coach in the coming days, not weeks. Looks like Laviolette is the heavy favorite at this point, but they very well could look to promote Vincent. That being said, Mike Babcock, it was the first reported interview Mike Babcock's had with an NHL club since he was fired by the Leafs in 2019. This is something we're going to keep an interesting eye on, because I know I've been hearing rumors about Babcock trying to get back into the league again. But at the same time, too, another coaching name that's been thrown around quite a bit is Joel Quenneville. Looks like he might be trying to make his return too. Yeah. So either way, head coaches are being fired left, right, and center in the NHL. All these guys are going to find a job, I can assure it. Anyways, guys, Gerry, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching this week, guys. We hope you